All right, I'm out of here.
You're listening to Above the Matrix, the broadcast for builders, operators, and leaders who refuse to collapse inside a broken system. Presented by Fred Smith, a Marine Corps combat veteran, strategic architect, and founder of Lead Your Power, and the Veterans Prosperity Society. And this isn't another interview show. This is doctrine-grade intelligence for people who know their survival isn't an accident. It's an assignment. Every week we bring you the tactics, structure, and rhythm to lead yourself and your territory. When the world around you drifts into noise, weakness, and collapse, we don't coach here. We command. We don't inspire. We install. If you're ready to operate above the matrix, beyond fear, beyond failure, beyond false freedoms, you're in the right space.
What is going on? It's your boy Fred Smith, and it has been a good minute since I've been live on anything radio, TV, internet, carrier pigeons, abacuses, or is it abaci? I don't know the actual, what do you call modern nomenclature. But what I can say is welcome. It is an honor and a privilege to be in front of you today. This is Fred Smith, and I am representing Above the Matrix. So, what is Above the Matrix and why should you care? Well, for starters, I have 134 trillion reasons why. But before we get into that, a little bit about my background and how I got into this space and why you should listen and why you should actually care. Back in April 30th, 1993, there was a very significant event that happened. Maybe you know what it is, maybe you don't know what it is. But around that time, a little thing called the internet was deployed. And as it's going to shape and form our culture and our society today, we have now experienced not only the causes of how this thing called the internet have affected our society, but also we're starting to see the effects of it. And during that time, I actually joined the Marine Corps around 1995 and was professionally trained on this thing called the internet from 1996. So imagine something being launched into the public, and actually the technical word is deployed. Like anybody can go to Google right now and just type in when was the internet like created, and it'll tell you that it was deployed, which is a pretty interesting way of saying that it was started. But needless to say, by the time I had a chance to actually learn it, then we fast forward now today, anybody who practically has any type of capability of getting online can ultimately shape their narrative. This is the opportunity, but it's also the challenge because it has affected our world to the point now where we have a lot of trust lost. We have a lot of uncertainty, the fear, the doubt, and more specifically, we have one full generation since 1996, actually almost two, that only know this way of communication. Because I'm a Gen Xer. So back in the day, when I wanted something to ship, I could wait 8 to 12 weeks and I wouldn't even care. Now, when my kids use the internet, if it's not here by like 9 o'clock at night, they're having fits, right? So, how does all of this affect you and why should you really care? Well, you see, what's going on now is that we live in a culture, in a society where we have to look at things with a different lens. In other words, if you were to really say at the end of your life, everything that you've accomplished, did you actually do that? Or did someone else's beliefs and their systems and their patterns and their behaviors actually influence you to the point where you really didn't live your own life? Let me give you an example. This small thing called the algorithm. In this show, we're going to go over so much high level advertising, marketing, and communication strategies. Just by you tuning in, you will get a deep, thorough understanding of exactly how these things are started and how you can use them to your advantage versus the other way around. So, as a top level advertiser and marketer, I get this question all the time, like, what's an algorithm? Like, what's an algorithm? What's an algorithm? And even the people, when I'm in these high level rooms, cannot properly explain an algorithm. If you're from the streets, an algorithm is nothing more than like the plug. Okay. And these social media platforms want you to always stay on them, which is why they will penalize you if you don't move a certain way on the platform or if you try to take people off of the platform. So the whole goal is for you to be an attention captain. And what you want to do is you want to captivate your audiences and actually lead them to your program, your offer, your product, your service. And you want to be able to control your own narrative. That is the power of this thing called the internet. But as we walk through parts of why this is called Above the Matrix and actually have a PDF I want to present to you, give it to a lot of my high level clients. And if I'm able to really, if I'm able to, this is still my first time navigating this landscape. So if you're commenting or questioning, please just be patient with me. On my second show, I'll probably give you the answers. But more specifically, as a top level military strategist who's been trained on the internet, I'm looking at it from that perspective. So it wasn't until around March of 2020, since learning it and actually applying it since 1996, where I've been uninterrupted in my work. So a lot of the shifts and changes that you're seeing, as an example, in the automotive industry, I was behind the scenes working on those brands. So chances are, if you sat in the car, I helped out with the marketing, the advertising. I was training some of the salespeople. I've trained the finance departments, like the general managers, the owners, you name it, A to Z. But the only thing that I was doing was personifying the algorithm, because when you get that part right, you understand that technology is supposed to help us. It's not supposed to disempower us. Like, as an example, I'm literally going to the United Nations in the next few weeks just to talk about this one thing, where specifically I'm going to talk about how artificial intelligence is not just a thing that's not going to go away, but it's also amplifying what our communication strategies need to be from a very high level so that we can stay ahead of the curve and we can stay ahead of the trend. So, an algorithm is nothing more than a servant to you who's supposed to put you in the right positions where your audience is so that you can effectively communicate. That's all the algorithm has ever been to me. And it's super important that we keep the definitions simple, because as you go through this show, you're going to see how this one thing that was innocent can now literally change the world, and it already has. So, getting back into that question initially, what I talked about was the 134 trillion reasons why you should watch Above the Matrix, is because that's currently the global debt that we have. Now, how does that tie into exactly how above the matrix works? Well, it's real simple. Most of us are so focused in on what's going on in our immediate world that we're not understanding that there is a greater global community out there, and it's operating with or without us. So, as an example, I've also worked in the advertising technology lane. So what that means is, if you happen to have like those ads that follow you around, I was one of the guys who helped like develop and build that out a little bit more. If you go onto a website and you try to go in anonymous, I was one of the guys behind the scenes who could still capture your data and still run targeted ads to you. So from a very high level, if you're listening to this and you're not doing anything in those industries or anything in those lanes, at a minimum, you're about 37 years behind the curve. So if you're watching and listening to this and it's hard for you to even turn on a computer, or you're just learning about AI, or maybe you're even listening to AI and you're using it as like your consultant versus you absolutely looking at it from a different lens of, hey, how do I use the technology versus the technology using me? then what happens is through time, you lose your sovereignty. And as a result of you losing your sovereignty because you don't have specific targets and goals and dreams and ambitions that you're working towards daily in your life, at the end of your life, you kind of look back and go, is that what I really wanted to do? And I'm a legacy player at this point in time in my life. I've done a lot of stuff that has been super uh, unique to me. Like I was one of the very first people, and I actually have it around here somewhere where I was driving like cars in the future before the public even received them. Because technology is at a point in time where if we aren't a part of that narrative, then what's going to happen is through time, it's going to control and dominate us. And that's not conjecture. That's exactly what's happening right now because most people are getting alienated from the doom scrolling. And what happens is it's hard for them to communicate with their next fellow human being. This is something that I saw even when I was living in Long Beach. I had my flip phone, right? And then this is around the time when smartphones just really started coming out. And it was one of the first things where I said, man, I said, this technology, if we don't use it right, is literally going to take over the world. Or comes the responsibility, but also really focus and make it happen to serve us, not the other way around. So when I'm talking about $134 trillion, what I'm essentially talking about is the total global debt that's on record right now. That if we don't understand how this machine works, everybody's sovereignty is in jeopardy. And when I say everybody's, I literally mean everybody's. So now you have a choice. You can either understand how this process called above the matrix works, or you can just turn off the channel and nothing's ever happened. But for those who have still stuck with me and you're watching the replay, give me your thoughts because what I really want to do is curate these conversations in a way where we can have a real discussion. And about 5 years ago, I ran a very powerful group that I've just reopened called New Room Collective. And this room was created online specifically to talk about all the things that I'm bringing to public radio right now, which is how do we keep our freedom? How do we keep our sovereignty? How do we understand what narrative is true and what narrative is false? And way, way, way much more because I've been professionally trained in this stuff. So, as an example, when I was in the Marine Corps, I was one of the guys who would literally feed the media because I knew how to communicate to the media. I had the resources to communicate to the media, and the people who I were working with were making the news. Same thing in the automotive industry. I was one of the guys who could facilitate the content, do the training and development, work on press releases. So, communication for me has been my entire life. And what I mean by that is from end to end, even in the automotive industry, from somebody washing that car all the way down to somebody absolutely in the top level rooms engineering the cars. I've had those communications in that discussion. So that's how insane my brain really works is that I'm very much so a doer, I'm an operator. I love to have fun, I love to help people, but more specifically, I have a message for you today. And the message is you are not alone. It takes teamwork to make your dream work. And if you're able to really focus and just understand that some of the stuff that we've been taught, we can learn as well as we can unlearn, then through time, you can craft and curate your narrative to exactly the way that you want to live on this earth. Now, again, I can't make a huge promise or an advertising disclaimer that, I can make a guarantee on that because, of course, we have to turn wrenches in the trenches in order for things to work. But when you're also looking at it from the viewpoint of you want to be able to really have a major impact on this planet, you really want to help people, you really want to grow and develop, and you really want to have very vetted, filtered, curated data that you can take and that's going to work. Well, that's what Above the Matrix is all about. What I want to be able to do with you in this specific broadcast is to really go deep with you personally, professionally, intellectually, spiritually, socially, not physically, because you have to do your own running. But for the most part, everything starts right here. And if we're able to understand that, then we're able to really focus. We're able to shift the narrative in a way that's absolutely going to serve us. and we'll be able to really help those around us who want help, because I'm a firm believer on only helping people who want help. I've tried it the other way, and I used to be that guy who wanted to help everybody. But guess what? Not everybody wants my help. It could be forever for whatever reason. I'm black. I'm ugly. I wear a black shirt. Like, there's so many biases out here that what I want to be able to get you to understand is that all of these biases cause all of this dissension, and as results, that's what keeps us stuck in the matrix. So in my other previous room, I only had two simple rules. The first rule was to bring the data and not the drama, because if we do, we're going to have to figure out how to monetize that, because if we don't, then someone else will. That was the first rule. And the second rule was to become a critical thinker, not a critical person, because there's enough of that out here to the tune of $134 trillion worth of negative debt that if we don't fix it, you won't have any conversations whatsoever. It's game over for real. And my challenge to you is to never really believe a word I say, because this is part of the critical thinking process. All I want to do is be able to present ideas and thoughts for you to take and do what I call take the half second step back, so that you're able to really look at it from a lens that's truly yours and say, hey, is this how I really want to live my life? Is this not how I want to live my life? And if I want to move in a certain direction, what are the barriers and the obstacles that are stopping me from making this happen? That is so essential to me. So when I came up with the concept of above the matrix, you've got to understand something about the way that I think. Everything that I'm going to present to you is stuff that clients have either paid me an insane amount of money to know, or I've had to craft and create in order to be able to get to the next level. Because what I've discovered, especially in this matrix of ours, is that there's a lot of noise. And what I want to be able to do with you is to actually cut through the noise that's affecting your life personally and professionally, so that you're able to thrive and grow and help others around you. That's the only way that we're going to be able to tackle this beast of 134 trillion in negative debt that, quite frankly, 1 billion people are directly affected with right now. You have a full generation out there who doesn't even want to own anything just for this reason, and they can't put a finger on it. Well, the reasons why they aren't able to put a finger on it is simply because they don't know what I'm about to share with you today. So part of this process is for us to really be able to use discernment in all the data that I'm going to give you. Really move forward, take this challenge and this opportunity to really ask questions. I'm here to serve the greater good and the public with this. And my challenge to you is to really start learning how to communicate in a way where you are a moving algorithm in your life, and you are really making your dreams and your goals and your visions and your ambitions come true, because you truly are prolific. It's one of the reasons why we keep growing and thriving despite all else. You know, that's how humans are wired. We're wired to mimic and help each other. But again, when we have this wedge in between called technology that can at times, not all the time, but can at times really shift our narrative and focus in a way where we're unable or unwilling to listen to somebody objectively, that's the problem that we need to take up collectively as a society. And another thing that I've been able to do, and then I'm gonna see if I can find this. I have a PDF here. I'm still learning the technology as far as how to do all of this stuff, but I do have a PDF called Above the Matrix. I'll be more than happy to share it with you. It's a free download. And the reasons why is because when I was first talking to a bunch of high level executives and entrepreneurs about this material, it was in a very quiet room out here in Orange County. And I was able to really help people focus on exactly what was not working in their lives personally and professionally. So this was huge breakthroughs for people, because as an example, anytime that you're watching or listening to the news, it does have an effect on us. Anytime somebody who you're listening to may have false information, how do you know what's right for you or what's wrong? Or like, how can we absolutely put on these optics that we need to have so that we can tell fact from fiction. This is the kind of stuff that I train on. This is the kind of stuff that lights me up, because when you realize what everything is happening in the world is relying upon skills, skills can be learned. So I had to get these filters embedded in me. I went through Marine Corps boot camp. After that, I went through Marine combat training. And then after that, I went through these tough, rigorous military schools and some advanced level schools that aren't on the map. And that was over almost 30 years ago. So it's totally possible to learn this stuff, and more specifically, ask yourself, how can I apply this right now? How can I use this right now? I want to prove Fred wrong. Like, what if I just did it this way, right? Have fun with this process, but also understand that the clock is ticking and we have to get results in our world, because my saying and other people saying out there is we can have reasons or we can have results. And what my goal is to remove all of those barriers that are standing in your way as reasons, so that we're able to really get you focused in a very quantum way, where that's all you have is this one track mind. And I can't take credit for that. That was one of my original mentors when I did door-to-door sales, and I'll probably be bringing a lot of those sayings back, because the way that he used to have us train and develop and move on the road, I was one of those kids who used to like knock on doors during door-to-door sales. I was getting those points for college through the magazine sales. That was me. I did that for several years before I joined the Marine Corps. So I went from really like even being homeless a couple times up to doing door-to-door sales. And then I learned this insane knowledge base that I'm going to share with you, that technically is even public domain now, because if you happen to have an internet connection, if you happen to have an advertising account, and if you happen to have a message in an offer, anybody can do what I'm doing right now. The question is, do you know how to properly use this technology so that you can get exactly what you want to have happen in your life? That's what the purpose of Above the Matrix is to enable and empower you, especially my veterans out there, because I didn't start experiencing the transitional problems that most veterans have until like 2020, because that's how crazy my brain is. Like, I went from doing the exact same thing that I learned in the Marine Corps, like my whole life, didn't have any pushback. Like, I was working with nothing but 7 to 10 figure business earners for over 20 years of my life. It is not the same lane. And then when my wife got sick and she nearly died, we'll talk about that later. I had to get off the road. And around that time is when we had the pandemic. So for the first year, my life was kind of like a breeze coming off the road, because it felt like I was on vacation, because everybody was like in shelter in place. But on the other hand, I had to learn new skills, because I was no longer playing in these high level rooms like I was for all of my life. And this is the problem that most veterans, most professional athletes have, high level players, where they're so used to playing at a high level that when they stop, like, let me give you an example. Some of the kids who play college football, or they play college basketball, they want to go into the NBA or the NFL, right? But a good majority of them don't. So then the question becomes, what does the next chapter of their life look like? And that's what I experienced coming off the road, because all I did was like travel and have these insane dinners and just a lot of next level conversations that I'm watching the rest of the public catch up on finally. Hence the reasons why I branded it Above the Matrix. There's usually a story or a purpose behind why I brand or name things. And this is for anybody who wants to really understand how branding and naming things work. Because in today's society, anybody can say that they're just anybody, because technology has a very low barrier to entry. So as an example, when I used to run automotive dealerships, if I wanted to run an ad in the LA Times, it would cost us $75,000 just to run what they call a double truck ad over the weekend, which means all of our cars were showcased in the LA area for the weekend for $75,000. Now with $75,000, you can run a really nice ad campaign and get a tremendous amount of yield off of that. But when I first learned all of this stuff, I had to do it the old school way. Like, as an example, for digital, anybody can take a picture now, but back in the day, I had to use the old school canisters to process and develop. So that's what I encourage people to do, is to take your experience. And as you're going out here into the marketplace and you're really trying to figure out how you need to communicate, what you need to have happen next in your life, understand that you are really a brand. But for me in particular, the reasons why I named this Above the Matrix was because I had played at such a high level that when my wife nearly died, I had to stop and literally reinvent myself. And that's one of the hardest things that anybody can do on this planet, yet alone if you happen to be a military veteran and you're so used to moving a certain way, you don't have to think about other things. That's one of the reasons why I engineered this whole process and this whole program a certain way so that you can get the real. And my challenge to you is to really go out here and test it and apply it and see how it works for you. I don't want to be just another talking head online. I've never been that guy. You know, anybody who knows me personally, professionally knows that I expect people to get results. Like I insist on that, because unless you have on your calendar when you know you're going to take your last breath, we don't know when that's going to happen. And that nearly happened to me when I was out in the Persian Gulf, which is one of the reasons why I've been so silent for a very long time. And I'll go into more of all of that stuff later. But for the most part, I just want everybody to get the real understanding of what Above the Matrix is all about. It is about you. It's about empowering you to finally get your voice the way that you need to have it crafted and calibrated in your life so that you're able to focus and get things done. Because we only have 168 hours in a week. For me, it just becomes math. And what I want to be able to do is to motivate you, coach you, inspire you to really get out here and do something big, because we literally have 134 trillion reasons why. And it is called the negative growth that we have as far as the debt that the whole world owes, which is totally insane right now. So I'm going to do my part. Let me see if I can actually find how to present or invite. Joe did show me this stuff. Shout out to Joe. If I happen to not get it here, I will do it on the next one, or maybe I'll do it through carrier pigeon. Who knows? Says my computer, upload file. And I think I can get it done here. It looks like I'm succeeding pretty well. And then what I'll do is I'll go over the actual training that I did with a lot of the top level executives, in that I'm going to show you step by step how I was able to really craft a brand out of thin air. So if you're open to that kind of stuff, that's what this whole talk show is going to be about, is showing you the secret sauce, like literally how to do this stuff at will and on demand. And I think I just did it. So this looks super cool. And if you happen to be listening or watching or doing the replay, let me know. Send a shout out. Also, what do you want to see on this show here? And we will make it happen. So I did it. I'm very happy. So this is Above the Matrix. And again, I went into the reasons why I named it that way. But this book right here is talking from a very high level about information and how information works. Because when we don't get the information the right way that we need to have it, it does turn into chaos. And the problem that we have is that we get bombarded with all of the information that, in my opinion, what we should really be doing is making order out of chaos. So, in specifics, what I did was well beyond what's called marketing and advertising. And quite frankly, it was called propaganda. Let's just call it for what it is. But the way that my mind works, and one of the reasons why I set everything down, was because I do things very ethically and I do my best to do things very intentionally. So when I started learning these skills, one of the biggest challenges that I had was I turned down a lot of stuff in the Marine Corps. Like they wanted me to report on this or do this or do that or do this. And I'm just like, no, I can't. I won't. So one of my first duty stations was called Fleet Hometown News Center in Norfolk, Virginia. And what I did there was positive news. People getting awards, people getting recognitions, people getting commendations, people getting promoted, like next level stuff that's really showing the human side of what happens when you can live up to your potential. So I did that for years. I actually got a Navy and Marine Corps Achievement Medal for it. And what happened was I absolutely overhauled the entire Navy department's it's like stories. And as crazy as that sounds, I think about it now, I didn't realize how big it was until like literally 2020. Okay. I'm the kind of guy where I just move a million miles a minute. And it was interesting because my chief at the time was just like, hey, you got this award. I'm like, cool, great. Like, he's like, no, you don't understand. Like, who do you know? I'm like, what do you mean, who do I know? He's like, who do you know? I'm like, what's going on? He was like, I didn't give this award to you. I was like, okay, well, just throw it on my desk. And he's like, that's the other thing. You're always going somewhere. Like, what do you like? Where are you off to now? And I was like, I'm on an assignment because I was really like attached in the Marine Corps. Like, I was the plug to like a lot of the positive news, which is the reasons why I understand how algorithms work. Okay. So if you're able to take this knowledge and this information that I'm giving you and actually apply it, then you'll really understand that what I'm saying is spot on. Like, you cannot mess with this stuff. So when I was really training up people around 2020, I said, it seems like I'm getting asked a lot of questions that seem redundant to me. And for a lot of you who are familiar with online marketing and advertising, I was one of the guys who, and I still am to this day, one of the guys who works behind the scenes with a lot of top level marketers and advertisers, helping them create and craft their campaigns. So when I first started getting out there on my own, the craziest thing about it was I saw what they call high ticket offers. And a high ticket offer is something that's like typically $10,000. It's actually going down to like $2,000. So in my book, anything more than $3,000 and up that you're trying to sell online is now considered, to me, a high ticket offer. Okay. So I've been working with a lot of these gurus, thought leaders, experts behind the scenes, and I'm just like, wait. And there were a couple conversations I had in particular where I was like, let me get this straight. You guys are charging like $10,000 for something that I think you should be like practically giving away for free. Because to me, it was essential information. And I even said it back it was 2015. I happened to be in a couple of rooms that were big time rooms and still developing at that time. I told them, I said, look, you are literally creating a cottage industry where in the future people aren't going to trust each other. And at that point in time, you got to get perspective. The internet was back in April 30th, 1993. I learned this professionally in 1996. Roughly, online space started developing like around 1997 as a formal organization. Then 1999, I think you had like Warriors Forum and a few other places. And I never considered myself a marketer. Like, this is crazy. But when I was working and I saw the development in the evolving of what we now know as the internet, and I knew that it would create this tremendous problem online, I knew I had to get more involved. So I had another designation called the game exposed, and we'll talk about that as well. I want to tie that in here. But the whole purpose of it was for us to really understand that communication, while it is fun, it should have intention, not necessarily us just extracting cash money out of people. So the deep dive into the machines realm was a part of that process for me to slowly start bringing in education and literature into the online marketing space to go, hey, you guys have some very powerful tools that literally I had to get a secret clearance to learn. It's just like, who taught you this stuff? But it became a cottage industry, and we had places like ClickFunnels. They were one of the people. If you don't know who ClickFunnels is, they're a software as a service program. And these guys are like, they're respectable young adults, but they have this powerful technology and they don't understand like that is really causing, like, if we don't use it right, it can cause problems in the future. So I created the deep dive into the machines realm just for that reason, because I wanted to start really exposing some of the tactics, because a tactic known is a tactic blown, right? So my viewpoint's real simple. I look at marketing and advertising just like training any animal. You have to understand how the animal actually thinks so that you can understand how to communicate with it. Same thing with your internet, same thing with marketing, same thing with anything that's online and offline. We have to be able to understand how the communication works so that we're able to really not only communicate, but we're able to get an effect. So the machine, the machines deep dive was one of those things that I just started talking about. So here's an example. The fear of missing out, FOMO. As long as I have been in the advertising and marketing space, because what I did, I told you back then, was literally called propaganda, right? the fear of missing out, FOMO, I did not hear that word until like 2018. So if you can get the idea of somebody who's been trained at a military level back in 1996, just hearing FOMO in 2018, but it's actually a tactic that's being used to generate revenue out of somebody, the fear of missing out. There are times when you should have like true, genuine, legitimate fear, like totally tracking on that. There are certain times and deadlines that I have to honor because if I don't get it, I don't get it. Like, as an example, the United Nations. I'm literally going to the United Nations in the next few weeks here because what I know is just that powerful where we have to start shifting the energy of the planet. Wasn't expecting it, had no intentions. And next thing you know, I get this invitation. That is true FOMO. I know that if I don't say yes, then chances are I may not get invited again. And I have got invited again as a result of saying yes the first time. That is true FOMO because my values are aligned now where my wife had even asked me, she was just like, do you ever plan on going into politics? I'm like, I don't know. Um, I don't have any problems talking about politics and religion because I understand the foundations of these things. So, and that's this kind of stuff I'm also going to be training, and I have trained on in the past, and I'm just going to re-release because we have to start talking about the quote unquote hard things. Because if we don't, this is how we get to a $340 trillion negative deficit on the planet. Okay, this is insane. I'm putting numbers to this so that you can understand the magnitude of exactly what Above the Matrix is all about. Okay. So the other thing is the nostalgia play. Like I said, I'm a Generation Xer. So now I'm starting to see online, as an example, we have like, I saw one on Instagram where it's like this Back to the Future set, right? So it's got like Marty McFly, and then on top of that, it has like the Nintendo box, and then it has like the wood paneling, right? That's the nostalgia play. Okay, I do like that. It reminds me of a time in my life where everything was perfect and everything was gorgeous, right? That's pretty cool. And then you have your ideal self. This is a good play that a lot of people in the personal and professional development space absolutely use all the time. And the reasons why they use it is because it works. Because if you're like most people, you want to grow, you want to expand, you want to do things in your life, you want to live up to your potential and actually go past it. So because you're not understanding the tactic behind it, we tend to not understand that we have to also have a counter tactic before we even see it. It's no different than if you're like playing volleyball, right? You have to learn how to drill and hit the volleyball. Or I play, right? In order for me, when I went to go play in the public, I had to practice in private, right? I had to rehearse in private because we practice by definition all the time. More on that later. But I had to rehearse privately in order to do it publicly, and that way it sounds flawless. This is the way communication practically is these days in order for you to not really succumb to what we see in news, to not succumb into what we see as advertising or TV or radio or whatever. You have to know what your values are up front because that way you can be in alignment to even listen to the message, to ask yourself, hey, should I really listen to this? Or should I change the channel? And in this case, most people scroll, right? But this is the ideal self tactic that a lot of people don't talk about, but it's out there. And it's one of those things where if you don't understand how this works, then what happens is it is negative manipulation. I'm a firm believer in manipulation because I'm always working to change my environment. When it comes to humans, I'd rather communicate and connect with only the ones who I want to align with because to me that makes more sense because I want to build long-term relationships, not just short-term gain. The ideal self happens to be one of those things. The other one is one of my favorite ones, which is called the celebrity endorsement. I find this one to be extremely interesting in the respect that because I've worked with a lot of celebrities, and again, the celebrities who I work with are super cool. We'll connect again. And this is the other thing when you're above the matrix. Like you have to realize that if you're below the matrix and you're just naming names, the problem with just naming names is that you never know if and when you could run into that person because they are a real person. We have to understand that we are all connected by the air we breathe. The internet has made this world a lot smaller, which is the reasons why when I created and crafted Above the Matrix, You got to understand something. I had a room of 2,200 savages. Like these are top level A plus players where they have trainers who train the trainers type of trainers. These guys are making anywhere from $4 to $1 million per month online. Like this is real data. This is real stuff. It even online with the even offline with the automotive dealers. Same deal. Multiple six-figure per month companies who know this stuff. So they're not just looking for anybody to give them just any type of information. They're looking for guys like me who've actually turned wrenches at a high level, who totally get this game. I'm bringing that to you right now because you have a choice. You can either get into the game as a creator or you can fall behind as an end user, because that's where it is. There is no middle ground in this game. You can think that there's a middle ground, and if so, that's fine. That part is called the matrix. That's the messy middle. This is the part where people get stuck in that little box. But just like any other box, where are the instructions? The instructions are outside of the box. I happen to be one of the guys who can print them out. Here are the instructions. You can either do this yourself or I can help coach or consult you through it. The choice is yours, because this choice wasn't available when I was a kid. You know, and I tell this to my son all the time, 18 years old. I'm just like, bro, like you got so much opportunity. This is amazing. Like I would be like a kid in a candy store if I had this kind of stuff when I was his age. Like my mom will tell you, like I had to. I'm from the hood. I'm from Chester, PA, and the minute that I was eligible to like get a job, we marched her to the old Chester High School, and she's like, "What are we doing?" I'm like, I need to grab my license to work. I'm here to work. This is what I'm providing you, is to be able to work efficiently in your lane, personally and professionally, above the matrix, because in most cases we're already in a matrix. Okay, more on that later. I want to stick on path here. And again, if this is making sense, let me know, because I want to be able to really give you highly curated, crafted information that's going to be specifically tailored to your audience and to your needs. So the celebrity endorsement just happens to be one of those things, which is the reasons why I also teach like a lot of diplomatic grace and etiquette, because this kind of stuff is the stuff that's needed right now. They call them soft communication skills, but in actuality, we have to learn how to communicate overall. So then I'm going to go into the urgency push. Now, the urgency push tends to be something that's very significant in a respect that what we want to be able to do is collapse timeframes. And even in the journalism world, when I used to work as a journalist, we used to have deadlines. It's absolutely essential and critical that you have deadlines, because if not, then you don't value your time. Again, it's math. If you want money, you have to understand math. And if you want money, then you have to understand how human emotions work. And if you want money, then you have to understand how a certain amount of effort can get you that money. If you want money, then you have to understand that there are certain systems and patterns and processes. Like it's a lot of stuff to making this happen. So when I look at the $340 trillion that's over all of our heads, it's safe to say that this has been well crafted. All I want to do is get a piece of that, because that is the matrix that we're all in right now. So when I go to the UN, it's going to be one of those things where it's just like, hey guys, look, I completely understand that we're all from different countries, but this thing over all of our heads, it affects all of us. So I'm going to hand them these codes to be like, look, this is what I've seen. This is what I've observed. This is not theory. I've turned enough wrenches. I've talked to enough people. I've helped people make billions of dollars with a B. I'm on record for scaling up several companies from zero to a few hundred million. They've all become multi-billion-dollar companies, and they're still in existence to this day. I think I can show people who want to get to a certain level in their life how to play this game. That's all I care about. Because again, I'm all about people bringing the data, not the drama. And if so, we'll have to figure out how to monetize it. And this is how we monetize it. I'm literally handing 8 billion people via this radio network the codes. So now you have a choice. You can either try to do this on your own. You can try to do this with your teams. You can try to do this with me, whoever, doesn't matter. But you cannot do this by yourself. You need help on this kind of stuff. All right. That's my Fred talk for today. You see that? That was the urgency push in real time. All right. Social proof and validation. While this one tends to be very significant in most people's lives, the truth of the matter is, to me, it's always been irrelevant per se, because you have to understand how marketing works. Because most people are either left brain marketers, they're either right brain marketers. So left brain marketers are very like analytical. Right brain marketers are very artistic. You have to be somewhere in the middle to see all of these dots. And I've played on all three sides of this. I've played very left brain analytical because I'm a beast when it comes to search engine optimization and all the back end technical stuff that needs to run. I'm also very artistic. I love to do all the woo woo stuff because I need to be in my creative flow. But as a creative strategist, right in the middle, I have to be able to pull from all of this stuff. And if all of this stuff sounds overwhelming, that's fine. That's the reasons why we have a 2-hour show. I want to dump as much as I can in this first show because we're almost here to an hour and I still can keep going because this stuff is endless. Okay. So any thoughts, any questions, any concerns, anything that you want help on, that's what I'm here for, is to really help. All right. But social proof and validation, social proof in itself is not as important as validation because you don't want to create stuff where people don't want and need the help. Like when I'm coaching up clients, the biggest problem that I see is that they already have an idea and they've already started building it out. But the problem is they don't understand that the market may not want that. That's the reasons why the validation is so important because you just don't want to lean into spending money and wasting dollars because for some of us, it could be our bankroll. Like if you happen to be somebody who has a 401k, or you happen to be somebody who wants to pivot from corporate America, or you happen to be somebody who saved up all your money and you want to take one real shot to see if you can actually get something to work on your own. Like there's a whole bunch of stuff involved with just the validation part that we don't have enough time for it today. But it's also one of the reasons why if you go to speedscaling.com, you'll be able to really download a lot of these materials for free because I'm going to do the ultimate data dump. Like I was telling Joe, I got a lot of information. I don't have any problems talking for 2 hours, but I want to make sure that it's done in proper context because the time is now for you to make some solid, hard decisions about how do you want to live your life personally, professionally, intellectually, spiritually, socially, financially. There's a lot of lees in there. You know what I'm saying? So we want to get through all of these lees to make sure that you can really live your life the way that you want to do it. You're in total integrity, you're having fun, and you're really serving people to the highest level, and you're really helping people. That's all I care about. All right. So then we go on to the next one, the machines operators. Got to talk to you about this one. This is pretty interesting. So when working with a lot of the top level marketers and advertisers on the planet, what I've observed is, and again, this is why I say everybody's guilty, no one's to blame. Because when you have a full generation since April 30th of 1993 who have been, for lack of a better word, indoctrinated into this new way of thinking, remember, this is the first time that this has ever happened on this planet because you have hardcore Gen Z who's a first time they don't have any, they've never had the opportunity to not be in tech. I'm a Generation X, which means that it was just coming around at my time. So I don't need to have my phone on me all the time. I just don't. I don't need to be plugged in all the time, right? Then you have millennials, then you have zillennials, and then you have boomers, and then you still have one more generation before them. So we're watching the evolution of human consciousness in real time being enveloped by technology. That's the whole point of that little micro rant. When it comes to talking and communicating with people, we have to understand that there are different levels and different ways to communicate and connect with people. The machine operators are no different. Some of these people are the ones who are like they buy all the advertising in the media, right? They're the ones who actually craft the campaigns. Like this would be an example of that advertising industrial complex, the marketing industrial complex, and the social media industrial complex, because they are industrial grade level by definition, right? So you have to understand that some of your thoughts are influenced by operators. And because they're being influenced by operators, when you listen to my earlier um, analytical dissertation of what's really going on, we have to ask ourselves, how exactly are we being influenced? Are we being influenced for our benefit? Are we being influenced for someone else's benefit? Are we being influenced in general in a way that isn't congruent with how we view the world? Like there's a whole bunch of different buttons that cause somebody to buy something or to do something. And that's what Above the Matrix is all about. It's literally about controlling your environment, which starts right here, to understand what you want to create out here. Because the last time I checked, nobody wants their time wasted. Nobody wants to just do stuff with no reason and no purpose, because we're purpose driven on purpose. So the machine's operators tend to be the influencers who understand everything that I'm talking about plus interest. They're students of the game just like me. They have professionally studied everything that we're going to be going over. And more specifically, they know how to operate the machine in a way where it's just like driving a car. They don't have to think about it anymore. They went to driving school, they went to advertising school, they went to marketing school, right? Like they understand how this stuff works. And for somebody who doesn't understand all of this stuff, it can become a challenge, because let's just say you're trying to lower your high blood pressure, right? You may get more propaganda out there and false information on it versus somebody who's really trying to help you, but because they don't know how to advertise and marketing, they don't have a voice. But because this bright and shiny object thing over here worked and got your influence and you bought it and it didn't work, you've got this real professional over here who's trying to reach you. And by the time, if and when you happen to meet that professional, the next thing you know, you've lost all trust. And this person has done nothing to you. That's how powerful the machine's operators are, because these guys have read the books. They've taken all the training. They spent hundreds of thousands, if not tens of millions of dollars of their own personal and professional money just to learn how to get you to say yes. These are operators. And with that power comes great responsibility, because at the end of the day, if you don't understand how these mechanisms work, then they become tactics. And again, a tactic known is a tactic blown, which is the reasons why I spent so much time with these guys. So when you're looking at the rules of this elite group of people, here they are right here. Rely solely on trend. All this is really going to be evergreen principles. It's being a human 101. Like, as an example, during the earlier days of internet and communication, we had what they call Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And that's what a lot of people have used to this day, even when it comes to writing and to really trigger certain thoughts in you, is they use that structure to really influence your buying behaviors, quite frankly. Then you also have data is king, but context is queen. So what that means is, whenever we have data, there's different qualities of data. It's no different than having 24 karat gold versus fool's gold, right? You've got fool's gold, 10K, 14K, 18K, 22K, and 24K, right? That whole gambit of knowledge right there all has its individual audiences. So there are certain people who just value 22 karat gold more than they value 18 karat gold. So I just broke down the data, but I also broke down the context in real time so that you can understand how these different silos work. Because when I'm talking to my clients in particular, it's like when I hear somebody say that they want to help everybody, I'm like, well, good luck on that one. Nobody has the kind of budget to do that. That's the first thing. But the second thing is, we have to have you take a hard look as to what you really want to do and what you don't want to do. And there's way more to it. So I need context as well as color. All right. So again, what we want to be able to do is to mold our mindset, but I also want to check in, because if you're watching the replay on this, I really want to know what inspires and motivates you to really get up every single day to really want to help people out. Like, I attract a different audience. My audience in particular are people who really are helpers out here. They'll practically do it for free, and they just don't know how to even charge, right? But then I also attract this other audience who is super elite and they're pioneers, and they know that they need to invest whatever it takes to get to the next level because they're trying to break through things, right? Anything else is what I call the messy middle, where we're trying to figure out what needs to happen next in our lives so that we can grow, so that we can thrive, so that we can have prosperity, right? This is what the above the matrix is all about. What we want to be able to do is to really help and serve you in a way where you're able to just function as a human being on this planet. In my world, everybody has to eat, which is the reasons why I'm going through these strategies and these tactics right now. But I also want you to understand that this isn't something that oh, just to go back to some of these images and these pictures as an example, this is actually when AI was just starting to get released, because I am a writer, I'm also an author, but what I like to do is to really test all of this stuff. So I was approached a while back, before a lot of this stuff became public, like for different LLMs, which are called learning language models, which is a whole different subject we'll talk about later. I've got my own AI software. Like, what I work to do is to stay ahead of the curve so that I can explain things to you in a way where, as you're growing and as you're thriving and as you're growing and as you're pulling yourself out above your matrix, you're able to really live, shape, and mold and design the life that you want. And as you can tell, I don't have to stop. But let's keep going on this one right here. These are things that you have to know from a very high level in order to really start making better personal and professional decisions in your life so that you can rise above the matrix. The psychology of persuasion is pretty big on my list. On a scale of 1 to 10, it's about 100, because what we're working to do is to really influence our environment in a way where we have complete control. Now, some people don't think that complete control is a real thing. I'm here to tell you that it is. If you don't believe me, anybody who's been through the military will tell you that it's absolute control. Now, the difference is they happen to have like a government organization, if you happen to be in the military, like overseeing the engineering of it. But they have things in a persuasive way in the military where you continually grow, you continually develop, you continually are challenged, but it was always fun for me. And this is what you want to be able to understand intellectually and emotionally, the psychology of persuasion, because some of you call it motivation when in fact it is persuasion. There is a difference. The other thing would be the precision of the actual data itself, because sometimes you do have that gut feeling, and then sometimes you have the hardcore data. Somewhere in between is going to be the truth as to how you are talking to people in your personal and professional life so that you can create the effect that you want personally and professionally, right? And then narrative mastery. This is one of my favorite things. So, in my particular program called From Vision to Victory, the way that it works is real simple. We have to be able to step back from who you currently are and work on who you want to be in the next 2 to 3 years. Same thing with your business. Same thing with anybody whose lives you're trying to touch. Like, why are you built the way that you're built? Because your narrative is what's really going to move forward. Your narrative is what's going to stay with you so that when we go to run ads, you're still promoting the exact thing that you want. Anybody who's watching this, who's ever like using ad agency as an example, or marketing agency, will tell you the reasons why there's such a high failure rate is because what happens is we aren't able to duplicate that message properly. So as a result of that, we don't get the effect, we don't get the result, we don't get the click, we don't get the conversion, right? We don't get any of that stuff. And then next thing you know, we're just burning through money and we're wasting time. So I have to go really deep at certain levels of our conversations in this Above the Matrix show. It's going to be very left brain at times. It's going to be very right brain at times. But the whole purpose of you listening to this is for you to expand. I guarantee you, I'm going to say one or two things that's going to shift your entire perspective. Because I've had people do this before in the past, which is one of the reasons why I pulled back a little bit, where I have had people calling in and be like, yo, Fred, the more I'm listening to you, the more my intelligence level goes up. I'm like, what does that even mean? Like, because I'm new to this, I don't know what I don't know when it comes to really talking to people who are reaching for help. So I think I maybe want to stop here for a second and just like legitimately apologize if you've been trying to find the right information and you haven't. My wife will tell you because she keeps score. All right. We've spent over $1 million of our own personal money just for my pivot. It was just that hard. And the reasons why is because, again, we all have our different levels of the matrix. For me, I was trapped in a higher level society who didn't care anything about me. But then I became stuck in a other society who didn't really care about me. At least I know I was making, I know, insane amounts of money and making massive impact from, even though these people didn't care about me, versus working with some people who always try to put you on trial like you don't know what you're talking about. It's one of the reasons why I say don't believe a word I say, and to just test it to see how it works out for you. Because gone are the days of us just hiding behind a brand. People want to see who they're actually dealing with. People want somebody who's real. People want to be able to talk to people who have walked in their shoes. So while my wife tends to hate that part, she knows for a fact that we have definitely been blessed and grown way past that part. And that's the part that becomes priceless, because what happens is, if you can turn your stress into strategic success, then that is going to be the differentiator between you really getting the growth and development that you want in your life versus being stuck in a victim mode, and understanding that there are people out here who care for you. And I happen to be one of them, versus just wondering like what's going to happen next in your life. I mean, it's one of those things where when I got asked to do the show, I'm like, yeah, I'd be honored to do that, simply because I understand the bigger need of everybody even grasping a little bit about what I'm saying, just so that they can grow and help out people around us. I believe everybody's prolific. I believe that sometimes we get suppressed just because. I believe that sometimes we just need to just take massive and immediate action no matter what, because I learned that in the Marine Corps. If one of my battle buddies is telling me to duck, I'm not going to sit here and question it. I'm in combat. I'm going to duck. I've been in combat situations. I get it. You know what I'm saying? So for some people who haven't done that, it's still like, well, they're in think mode versus taking action. So the people who I've worked with practically my entire life, there are straight action takers. And it's one of those reasons why life can become exciting. So you have to look around your immediate environment and ask yourself, like, are the people who I'm hanging around with, are they really here to serve me? Or am I serving them in a way that isn't congruent with who I am? Because that's a tough thing that we all have to face. Like, that's the reasons why I can give this away for free, because just because you know it doesn't mean that you're going to do it. It's no different than like somebody listening to a good song on the radio. They're just listening to it, but is it really impacting them? Are they like just driving? Are they actually listening to the words? Are they trying to understand like the thoughts behind it? Like, these are different levels of thinking, no differently than being in a car accident and people see the exact same car accident 8 different ways because there's 8 different people. That's how this knowledge from above the matrix will impact you, because it's designed to hit your brain in a different way that maybe you haven't heard before. And I'm going to say 1 or 2 things that's going to shift your entire narrative to the point where you just go, man, I haven't thought of it that way until now. I've had to do sales training this way. I've had to do marketing training this way. I've had to train up world leaders who are like in media conflict zones that like, hey, sir, we need to talk about this right now. Like, like I've been out there. Okay. I'm here to distill all of that down in just a couple short hours every week. And that way you're able to really get the knowledge that you need so that you can thrive and grow. All right. So that was my narrative mastery to you. All right. In the art of exclusivity. Okay. This is big. Sorry, not sorry. We have to be exclusive. Why? Because your message will not resonate with everybody. It just won't. Not everybody's going to want to listen to a brother who's been out on the combat lines, who has actually worked with world leaders, who's trained and developed these guys, who's also from the hood and he's able to get out of it. Like, nobody, some people just don't want to listen to that, and that's okay. Some people just want to listen to stuff that's just mindless. Some people just want to listen to stuff that's just inspiring. Everybody has their own baked in biases, and I'm not here to fight that. Everybody's right. There's plenty of prisons and jails where people may not tell you whether or not they're guilty or they're innocent, but they will always tell you why they're right. They will always tell you that. So we have to have perspective as to when we're talking to people, who should we be talking to and who we shouldn't be talking to, because this is how you really are able to craft your message and really get to your audience as fast as humanly possible without having to worry about all the pushback from people who wouldn't support you in the first place. I love everybody on this planet, just for the record. I do. And the reasons why I say it like that is because we all have one belief where we believe we are right. Like, straight up, it's what survival is built off of. The part where I want us to prosper, though, comes from us being able to communicate with each other, being able to have hard conversations that we normally wouldn't talk about, being able to really see everybody for who we are, being able to really understand that we are all connected by the air we breathe, being able to understand that we all have a massive problem that we all need to fix right now. Like, these are individual conversations I can have with a collective. It's what I call holistic thinking. You're thinking about both things at the exact same time, because even from an advertising viewpoint, that's what's expected now, and that's what the algorithms want. So I'm sharing with you best practices. And my prayer is that the best practices do not become collective ignorance, because sometimes they just do. And that's just the way it works. So we've got about 45 minutes left. I don't know if I'm going to be able to go through the whole book today. But what I really want to be able to do with you is to say, if you want more of this, you can go to speedscaling.com. I have actually launched the Veterans Prosperity Society just for this reason, is because there's a whole bunch of people out here who are highly trained, highly capable. You don't have to be a veteran. You can, and again, you don't necessarily have to even be in the US, because this is international. What I'm saying to you is that if you're a capable human being and you want to thrive and grow and you really want to develop and help other people, I've I've cut a path. I'm a pioneer in a lot of different industries, and I'm here to not impress you, but just impress upon you that not all information is created equally, which is the reasons why I'm here right now at UPRN, period. Because it's one of those things where to whom is given, much is expected. And if you happen to be a very capable person, then it's your responsibility to go out here and bless and help out other people. At least that's my biased viewpoint. All right. So your roadmap above the matrix. I have a whole series for this. I have a whole training course for this. But the bottom line is, here are the top three things that I really encourage anybody who is listening to this to absolutely do. The first one is to educate yourself. It's not that simple. The reasons why, let me take a quick drink real quick. Over an hour, and I'm just now taking a drink, right? But it's like, the reasons why we have these major problems is because we're lacking literacy in certain areas. So, as an example, when I lived in Chester, I didn't care about anything outside of Chester. I barely even knew Philly. It was just like, because Philadelphia is just outside of Chester, right? So, and some of my friends, like if you were living in Delaware, it was like, whoa, that's a big deal. You're away from Chester. If you were living in Virginia, you'd be like, oh man, you're really doing it big. Like, you're from Virginia. And if you're living in North Carolina, you'd be like, oh my God, like you're totally different next level. And when people used to come back home, you check out the plates and you knew they were like doing stuff. Like anybody from Chester will tell you that. Like it, because it's just a very tight community, right? And it's just like, I didn't have any perspective as to how the rest of the world really worked. So because I didn't have that perspective for a long time, I just thought that like my own little area of living, and that was it. Like if I happen to go to Colorado, good luck on that. If I happen to go to Hawaii, good luck on that. If I happen to go to Singapore, like, you follow me? Like, I was totally uneducated. I didn't understand how the world worked. I didn't understand why I should be really like looking at other cultures. I had no clue whatsoever. And when you multiply me times a bunch of billions of other people, you can understand why we have $340 trillion worth of global debt, like straight up, because nobody's got their eye on this one big thing that's really affecting all of us. So when you educate yourself, you're able to really understand from a high level and a low level and everything in between exactly what you need to do so that you can rise above everything else in your environment and actually start controlling it. But it starts with educating yourself. And you have to master the tools. Now, this is the part where I get left brain, but because I'm so creative, I have to dial things back and actually put a dollar amount behind it. Because the truth of the matter is, we can talk and we can plan, but it absolutely takes money to buy land, period. So without being able to really analyze and assess situations, you get stuck in this matrix. You don't understand like why you're failing every single day. Like for some of my clients, what I challenge them to do, especially when they're scattered and all over the place, look, and I have it on my phone right now. Every 30 minutes, take inventory of exactly what you've done. You say you want this, but yet you're thinking of 30 other different things. But because you don't have analytics, you don't know where you're going. So any road's going to get you there because you don't know where you're going. You have to be able to really hold yourself accountable and look at the analytics. Then the next one is practicing storytelling. You've heard me say several stories throughout this whole production. And the reasons why is because that's how humans really learn. We can train, we can develop, we can drill, we can practice, we can do a whole bunch of things. But if you look at most of the most powerful stories on this planet, where do they come from? They come from stories and art. Like if you could look at any civilization around here that's like still in ruins, their art is still here, like thousands of years later. That's how powerful the art of actually storytelling is, because they've crafted that story through their art. And that's a perfect example of it. You can go to any museum around here. These are real world things of how much of an impact you can make and just rise above your current challenges just by understanding how this above the matrix methodology works. All right. Network with the best. Period. You are going to be the sum of the 5 people who you hang around. That is so true. And at first I was like, that's not true. It's a bazillion percent true. You have to really be able to understand that if you don't create your own little micro echo chamber with people who have the same values and beliefs as you, then you're just naturally going to get more dumb. Perfect example, take full responsibility for it. When I was actually working at the post office, I had just I was selling cars for a long time. Wanted to be a father to my daughter. Moved all the way to North Carolina, just outside of North Carolina, and I started working at the post office. And the craziest thing about it was a very simple, mundane job. I had to do just this one thing over and over and over and over again. You're not going to get smarter by just doing one thing over and over, and there was no creativity to it. And it got to the point where one of the guys was talking to me, and he was just like, I noticed that you just don't really talk to anybody. Like, what's going on? Like, who are you? And I was just like, I respect you. I think you're cool. And I was like, this is what you do. I just personally feel my intelligence lowering. Like, and it wasn't any dig on him. It's just that I understand that that wasn't my network. So I would rather just stay by myself and just try to figure it out. And that was me. And it actually worked for me. It may not work for you, versus just going out to hang, going to drink, going to do whatever else they want to do to be cool. I was like, I'm not into that kind of stuff, guys. Like, I'm only here to really focus in on being a father to my daughter. And that's all I care about right now. So I separated myself, but I wind up networking with some of the top players out there in the Hampton Roads areas. I was able to like get into music studios because like I play music, right? I was able to do high-end weddings because I was doing the photography there. So the wedding started like $5,000 and up, just because I knew what I wanted and I just stuck to my values. That's how important really networking with the best is, because there's a whole bunch of people out there who think just like you. But the minute that you think that you're the only one is the minute that you become isolated. And this is about divide and conquer. We want you to think the other way around this. It's not about divide and conquer. You want to find like-minded people. Hence, you can actually start building and growing and thriving personally, professionally, locally, as well as online. So hopefully that wasn't too much of a mouthful. Question everything. I'm a walking question mark. And when I was in the Marine Corps, that's what I was trained to do. I'm insanely curious. I'm insanely curious on a very positive stuff. Like, I don't care about the negative stuff, the stuff that there's enough negative out here for us to all get trapped in it. And when I first ran my group online, when I had 2,200 people, that's exactly what they wanted to focus on. What about this? What about that? What about this? What about that? And I'm just like, well, first of all, if I start talking about that on social media, I'm going to get kicked off. Like, you don't own this space right here. You got to read the terms and conditions and talk to the terms and conditions, like always, right? But for the most part, those questions, what they said were legit, but it's like, how is that going to benefit anything? How is that going to benefit everybody? So it's one thing to question everything. It's another thing to question with intention, with a purpose. Because if you don't question with intention, with a purpose, then you're going back to this point in time where you're just suffering from bright and shiny object syndrome. And I think we've all heard about that. You don't want to just be everything to everybody. What you want to be able to do is draw a straight line and walk it in your life and figure out what angles are going to help you stay on that path, because the path is this wide. So you're going to be vectoring off this and that way, but you don't want to be so far wide to the point where you're not being effective. So questioning everything helps keep you on track. It helps keep you narrow. It helps keeps you focused. And more specifically, it'll also help you do number 6, which is to stay updated. Because if you aren't updated in this world, I just had a conversation this morning with a gentleman. He says, hey, Fred, I think in the future. I'm like, that's great. I do too. While my head is in the clouds, my feet are firmly still planted on this ground because every day I have to get something done, with leverage or with machines or with tools. But if I'm not staying updated as to what the trends are looking like in my life, personally or professionally, then I'm going to get left behind. I don't want to get left behind because I know what it's like to be left behind on certain levels. If I'm already bringing to you, and this is 2025 right now, if I'm bringing to you what I learned back in 1996 just now, that's almost 30 years. I don't know, 40. I don't know, I can do math right now. It's a long time, you know. But my point in saying that is that we at some point in time have to be able to cut off the knowledge information and just thrive where we're at so that we can have a stable foundation. It's too many people, especially high level artists who I've worked with directly. The number one problem that they have is that they're missing reality. They're missing, like, okay, you made this great art piece or you've done this incredible thing in your life. Who's going to buy that right now? Perfect example was Shalene Johnson. Shalene Johnson had something out with Beachbody where she had this next level weight training set. The problem was it was a great program, but there wasn't enough volume in order for her to sell the program because those weight sets were still experimental at that point in time. So she literally had to wait, I think, like 10 years because I actually have the program. She talked about it. I think I had to wait like 10 years before that program got into mass traction. I'll give you another example of that. When I was working in the automotive industry, now everybody can use QR codes like candy. Like people know what a QR code is, right? For almost 15 years, when they brought it out just before the pandemic, that was a perfect example of technology that was there. It worked, but it just wasn't available for everybody. But because I stayed updated on exactly how it worked, and this is something that was the craziest thing that probably happened in my whole automotive career. We were talking about getting rid of the QR codes. Nobody knew that a pandemic was going to happen. And I opted and I told the whole team, like, we got to keep this in. And sure as the pandemic happened, everybody switched to QR codes. And it was one of the reasons why we were able to communicate. But had we left that out, it would have cost that particular company tens of millions of dollars worth of sales. That's how important staying updated is. Whether you're using this concept personally or professionally, staying updated is one of the key things, but you have to calibrate your mind in a way to where you're staying in your zone. So as an example, with me as an example, anybody can go to Google Trends. They can really see exactly what they want to know more about. And anytime an article or news or video or something pops up and it's in Google, you'll get an email for it. That's the way you can stay curated and crafted and keep your mind focused on making the main thing so that you can rise above the matrix. All right. Transitioning to the heart of the matter. We're at the half an hour mark. I got 30 minutes. I don't know if I'll get through the whole thing, but again, if you want, that's fine. You can go to speedscaling.com and actually just download this. But again, what I want to be able to do just from a very high level is just really go through some of the other key strategies here that I want you to really what I think are just absolutely imperative. Because when I'm working with people online or offline, personally and professionally, I like to put things into terms of math. Okay. And the reasons why is because the math is the math. You can't argue with the numbers. What we can figure out from a very high level and also in between is how is your math affecting your life? For some people, they don't need a lot of math in their life in order to like function. They just only want to have, like, for me, I'm a Marine. All I need is 200 square feet and a couple of dollars. I'm good, you know. But my wife will be like, "Oh yeah, you know," because at one point in time we had like 15 cars, and it's just like, you know, okay, we got all this stuff, which is cool, but it's like that doesn't define me, right? But my point in saying that is when you have the template and you have the path and you can really articulate and get there consistently, then you have choice in your life. And when you have more choice, you have more opportunity. And in order to get above this matrix, in order to have that kind of efficacy, you have to understand the numbers and reverse engineer back into them. So this whole column that I have right here is real simple. If you're struggling right now, you're under 10K a month, you have a knowledge gap problem. Just what one of me and my buddies Ray talk about all the time. You have a knowledge gap. So what is a knowledge gap? A knowledge gap in the terms of being above the matrix is you're missing one or two key elements that are fundamentals in your life that you should have. So let me give you an example. Let's just say you're listening to this and you're an employee, right? And you decide that you don't want to work for somebody else anymore. And that's fine. You know, I've been an employee before. I love it. I've worked for myself before. I love it. I've lived off of passive income. I've loved it. You know, like I'm a product of all these different products, so I understand it. But what you have to understand is that if we look at it in the terms of numbers, like traditionally getting income. I'm not talking about the stuff where it requires certain types of leverage. I'm talking about raw knuckling out. I want to make $10,000 a month, right? There's typically a gap in how you perceive yourself in relation to what the market wants. So what you have to do is figure out what one or two things that you can do right now to increase your literacy on what you want to do. So as an example, whenever I'm talking to somebody who wants to know more about marketing or advertising, I ask them, okay, well, what have you done so far in order to really like master marketing and advertising? They go, well, I watched some YouTube videos. And I'm just like, okay, you watched it, but did you apply it? No. Okay. Well, guess what? Just like exercise works only when you do it. So maybe you need to do a little bit more to see what your pattern is, because the problem with information is it's just that it's information. The knowledge comes in to when you apply it, to when you understand why it's there in the first place, to understand like what the rules are involved with that particular piece of information and how to apply it in order for it to work in your life. And some people just don't want to put that much effort in, but yet they want to make over 10K a month. I'm like, well, good luck on that. That's just level one thinking. Like you have to understand, like the reasons why most people are stuck is because they don't put math behind this stuff and they don't put actions behind this kind of stuff. So when I'm working with somebody, I'm like, well, are you going to be a victim, or are you like legitimately going to do this stuff? Because in order to get above the matrix, you have to take responsibility for your life. You have to take responsibility for your actions and understand that where you are isn't necessarily where you want to be, but you have to figure out what you want to be 2 to 3 years from now and work backwards. That's the key to this whole game. That requires math. Level one for 10 to 20K a month. When I had my tax license, I'm not here to dispense tax information. When I had my tax license, it was the exact same problem. It was just like what I discovered was people get stuck between 30 to 50K a month. And I could never figure that out until I absolutely observed it. When you have a problem, typically, if you're under 30K a month, it's always going to be, in most cases, a sales problem. Like in most cases, not all cases, but in most cases. And the reasons why is because you still have this mindset issue where maybe you're stuck at 10K a month, right? So you're thinking like a 10K guy trying to get to 30K, but you don't even know what 30K really looks like, which is the reasons why you have to have like people who you surround yourself with. Find local events in your area where they're high-end events. Go talk to people who are doing exactly what you want to do and actually go talk to them, because in most cases they want to talk to you. So it's all different ways that you can just break through this matrix, but it starts with you actually making a solid decision to being like, hey, I want to do this. Because if not, then what happens is you become a product of what you don't want versus actually pushing forward. So hopefully that makes sense. Then you've got for people who are 100 to 800K a month. I worked at that lane for a long time. It's a whole different atmosphere. At that point in time, you're talking about leveraging like assets and funnels and other people's energy, because not everybody wants to run 100 to 500K a month like business. They just don't. Like even the people who I talked to didn't want to run it. Like that's Fred. That's the reasons why I paid this person that much. Fred, that's why I do it this way, right? But by that time, if you ever get to the 100 to 500K a month stratosphere, the problem that you're going to have right there is that you get bored real easily because you kind of beat the game of life, because we don't need a lot of money to live off of. Okay. At least I don't. And most of the people who I know who are absolutely still doing this right now, they don't need that kind of money. Matter of fact, they actually put themselves on a budget and then kind of live off that budget. I said the B word, because what you really want to do when you're really trying to grow above the matrix is you want to be able to understand when is enough. Okay. Because we have this hustle culture that's out there that's absolutely decimating the way people communicate, the way people think, the way people move. And it has literally gotten us to this $340 trillion problem that we have. That's just one piece of it. It's not the whole piece. But what I'm working to do is break down this whole machine so that you're able to see it from a very high level, because you now have a choice. I'm never going to give you information that I haven't tested, that hasn't been vetted, that doesn't work, because I've been in situations where words can turn into war, and I've been in situations where it's literally life or death. I'm only here to give you what I know works, because what I know works. You can challenge it, you can break it down, you can ask questions, you can, try to see how it's working in your life personally and professionally. If it requires any more than what I'm doing here, then just book a call and we'll talk about it. And either me and my team will help you out. But for the most part, Very few people I've seen at the level 3, which is 500K a day. Well, one of my top mentors did 1 million a day. He did some insane stuff, but he's not the only guy who I know who's doing like a 500K a day. At that level, it's all about impact. At that level, it's all about like how can you leverage your talent, your skills, and your abilities to really help the world out, because that's a true amount of power. And with that power comes the responsibility involved with it. So we're at the 35-minute mark. If you have any questions, any thoughts, any concerns, just drop them down. Happy to help, here to serve. And just in closing, because I really want to wrap this up before we talk about anything else, because you can grab this at speedscaling.com. That's not a problem. What I want to talk about is what most people don't talk about, which is absolutely essential, which is really learning how to leverage. Okay. Whenever you look at advertising, whenever you look at marketing, whenever you look at communication in general, I'm always looking at, as a professionally trained broadcaster, how can I impact the most amount of people with my thoughts, with my ideas? Am I really making impact? Am I really saying the right words? Am I really saying it the right way, in a way where I can really help people with my offers and services? Because I know I've helped people get off of hard drugs. I've helped people withdraw. I've helped people detox. I've helped people make millions of dollars. Like, I've been end to end, from a hardcore businessman to a humanitarian. And again, I'm not sitting here to impress you, but just impress upon you how powerful this methodology really is. And you have to make a decision, though, as to how you want to live your life and how you want to bless others, because this does not work unless you are really trying to do good in the world. I've watched people try to take bits and pieces of this methodology, and I can always tell because they can't explain it right, right? So then, as a result of them not being able to explain it right, they confuse their audiences, and next thing you know, I'm in a different audience because I'm like, oh, well, you should have said it this way. And people go, oh, well, who's this guy? It's like, well, I'm the guy who he kind of like, different story for a different time. My point is, I encourage everybody to really apply this in your world, see how it works in your world, take baby steps if necessary, and then bring your questions back to me. I'll be more than happy to answer them. I do have askfredsmith.com as well. Just want to check and make sure that that's still working properly, because I've had it forever. But if you need any help with any of the stuff that I'm here to present to you today, understand this: the change works when you decide that it's going to work. In my world, it isn't seeing is believing. In my world, you have to believe it first, then you see it. Okay. And that's how this whole process works. It's no different than when I got off the road, and we used to have a kennel. And the craziest thing about it is that I'm allergic to dogs, but that's how we got the kennel, was because we got hyperallergenic dogs. And then my family was like, oh, well, you're not going to pick up dog stuff. Like, you're a white collar and blah, blah, blah. Ha, ha, ha. I'm like, I'm from the hood, y'all. Like, you don't understand. This is just one part of my whole personality. So the minute that I got off the road, we started a kennel because the dogs, my buddy at the time is a professional trainer. Like, he actually trains dogs, and he actually shows dogs, right? So they happened to get pregnant during obedience school, had to wait for all that to happen. And then when the dogs got back, my wife absolutely fell in love with the puppies and was like, oh man, we need to have more. I'm like, okay, great. It's the pandemic, whatever. I'll try this out. So I did that for a little bit. And the craziest thing about it was, my kids were like, oh, we don't believe you're going to do it. I was like, I'm going to do it. And I showed them. I believed it first, and then I saw what needed to happen. So we wind up doing so well during the pandemic that when we went to look for certification to be like kennel masters, the people who were handing out the certifications were just like, can we use your contracts? Can we use your processes? I'm like, wait, you guys are supposed to be certifying me, not the other way around. I'm telling you, that's how powerful this information really is. When you believe it first, you're going to start seeing the angles that you need to take to navigate out this matrix. But realize, this is a big, powerful tool that I can give you right now, just on our first show, is that whenever you take your time to really study this stuff, when you really ask yourself, how can I apply it? The solutions will absolutely start showing up. I have one client right now, same thing. She has a freelance service. And when she first started coaching with me, she went from not seeing any opportunity to start seeing so much opportunity that she had to absolutely start putting blinders on. That's how powerful this information really is. And I'm trying to show you exactly how Top level advertisers and marketers in the world absolutely think through the creative before they push one button, because you don't have a lot of time to create the effect that you want. Like when I got off the road and I realized that I was in my mid 50s, I'm just like, damn, like who are these little kids trying to tell me what to do? Like, y'all crazy, because I'm used to being the boss. And I'm just like, wait, this is totally like not what I signed up for, right? I'm like, how do these kids grow up and I'm still the same age, right? Because we all tend to live in our own bubbles. We tend to all live in our own echo chambers. So what's advisable is we understand how other people connect. We understand how other people think. We understand our own communication style. And then from there, you're going to start finding your own market. You're going to start finding your own sweet spot. You're going to start finding how people move in a way that's in alignment with how you move. And that way guys can exchange. That's what marketing is all about. I look at advertising the same way. It's like, it's just friends who I haven't met yet, who I just want to reach out to. You know what I'm saying? Like, but we have to have everything tight in our life. Like, because see, what I've discovered is that when I was working with a lot of automotive dealers, the craziest thing about it is when you got more money than God, it's not about the money anymore. It's about really impact, and it's about purpose. And it's just like, you beat the game of life. So how can I help bless other people so that they can get exactly what they want in life? And that's what I'm providing here to you in Above the Matrix, and which really ties into actually all of them: cultivating relationships, continuous learning, and guarding your integrity, especially number 4, because when you have this kind of power and you're able to really see things as they are, you have a choice to make. You can use your power for good, or you can use it for evil. I've already told you that there's a $340 trillion problem on this planet, quite frankly, that needs to get fixed. And if we don't fix it, then none of us have a future. So at the 45-minute mark, I got about 15 more minutes. And I just want to go into some of my favorite stuff here, which is the secrets that they keep. Now, let me talk about these secrets here for a second. What I'm about to go into is really even more powerful stuff. And the main reasons why I go into it is because these are tactics. Okay. So I'm giving you the best tactics up front so that you can absolutely try them and apply them. Okay. Because they're already working. This is the stuff that's been working for at least 30 years. Okay. So some of these tactics still aren't known. But what's even more important than the tactics are the principles. So what's a principle? A principle is just like me throwing this pin up in the air, and it's like gravity. You can expect this principle, like the principle of gravity is just always going to be here. You're never going to make the bet of $1 million that if I throw this pin up, it's going to stay up in the air. You're never going to make that bet because you know you're going to lose it. Same thing with principles. Principles are going to be around forever. What I'm showing you are tactics right now. Tactics are the problem with tactics is that if you use them the wrong way, then it becomes more of a combat versus a communication. So as an example, when I'm doing my sales training, what I do in particular is I just have a regular conversation like I'm having with you. Most of the salespeople who I've trained, they already know all the sales tactics. They've read every single book, especially talking to automotive dealers who've watched every single salesperson come in and out of their life. What they aren't used to having are real conversations. What they aren't used to having are people who really understand how they think, to be like, hey, look, we got something in common. That's the reasons why we're here. Let's just figure it out together. I'm a big boy. I can handle a no. Can you handle a no? Like, this is true communication. This is how you break through the matrix. You break through the matrix with very powerful, effective, simple communication. Okay. You can have an agenda. That's fine, because agendas keep people focused. But listen to how I'm using the words. I'm using the words with no energy behind them, because you do need to stay structured. You do need to stay focused. There are going to be some people out there who are absolutely up to no good, who are going to try to harm you versus help you. That's life. But what isn't life is the fact that we just accept it. What isn't life is the fact that we just don't create a path for ourselves that we're able to really control, because you have the steering wheel of your life. You may not think so, you may not know so, but have you really looked? And if the answer is yes, have you looked and actually done something with it? And if the answer is no, then you have to do something with it to see what kind of results you're going to get. That's the way it works. So that's why I'm happy to present this stuff to you. So the manifestation in marketing should not be a weird concept based on what I'm saying. It's no different than like me being able to broadcast to you directly. Somebody had to think of the technology, right? Somebody had to actually sketch it out to see how it's going to work, right? Then after that, they had to like create a blueprint. They had to put it in mass production because people wanted it. They matched it up with today's current technology. And now there's a camera, there's a computer, there's an iPad. You follow me? Like, this is how this works. Like, so manifestation should not be a weird word. When you got into a car, somebody had to think about that car. When you got on the road, somebody had to think about the road that you're driving on. When you go into that building, somebody had to think about that building, but they also had to produce it. It was one thing to think it, it was another thing to produce it. This is how manifestation works. So if you're able to really get that idea, this is how you can start creating opportunity out of thin air as well. But most people just don't take time to really stop, think, and figure out exactly what they want so that they can make it happen. And they don't stay consistent enough to make it happen because we suffer from the bright and shiny object syndrome, or we just squirrel out all over the place. You're grown. You have to make a decision as to what you're going to take responsibility for and just draw a straight line and walk it. Because if you can't, you can't manifest. Because marketing to me is just how you move, whether it's online or offline. All right. Awareness and audience perception. I'll read this one out loud. The elite marketer, much like an enlightened individual, possesses a heightened awareness. They don't just see their audience, they understand them and resonate with them. So that goes back into what I was saying earlier. I'm not just seeing my audience. I'm like, hey guys, check it out. Have you ever heard this quote? All the world's a stage, right? Shakespeare said that. So, okay, cool. Well, who built the stage? Who hired the actors? Who wrote the script? Who put the whole stage together? You follow me? Like, this is a whole orchestra of life. And if you look at it from that viewpoint, then you are the director of your life. So now you just have to direct yourself out of the matrix here somehow, some way. And that's the reasons why I have this very first thing that I'm delivering to today, because to me, this is the catalyst once I got off the road to do everything that I've done. Like, go to my LinkedIn, go to my Facebook. Like, I'm just connected to some of the world's like top minds just because this is how we move. And I'm not the only one who thinks like this. My challenge to you is to take this information and to actually use it, to actually put it into practice, to actually turn a wrench. You'll be surprised at what happens when you turn a wrench, right? And again, discipline and strategy execution. This is the one that gets a lot of people because unless you've like been in the military, or maybe you've played professional sports, or you've like worked as a martial artist or anything like that that requires discipline and strategy execution, it's going to be hard for us to really get the idea that once we left out of high school that we need to continue to like learn, or we need to continue to train, or we need to continue to stay educated, or we need to continue to just work in a certain way where we're always getting results short term and long term, right? Because we aren't trained like that. Like, I think during my next show, what I'll do is I'll go over there's certain quadrants that you need to learn to understand that, yes, you are parked in a certain quadrant of life. Now, if you like that part, not a problem. If you want to change that part, that could be a problem because you have to learn the vocabulary. You have to learn like how to move a certain way. It's no different than almost learning how to walk again or how to talk again. Like, in order for me, like this voice that you're hearing, and I keep forgetting it, which is the reasons why I'm glad that I'm saying it. This voice that you're hearing right now is not the voice that I was born with. Like, I was actually professionally trained in the Marine Corps to be a broadcaster, and I just couldn't magically turn it off. So what was interesting was, and I think I told Joe this, like the people who failed my school the most, we had the heaviest accents were from like Philadelphia and Texas. I'm just like, okay, great. Like, I got a lot of work to do. I spent 16 hours a day sometimes just getting this voice the way that it is, the way that you hear it, the resonance, like the articulation. And I forget about it because I've just done it so long that I don't even think about it anymore because it is me. I had to go from water, because that's how we say it, water, to water. Like, I had to learn all of these little subtle nuances because that's where relationships lie, or in the subtle nuances. When it comes to marketing and advertising, that's where the conversions lie, or in the subtle nuances. But if we don't understand that we have to like be disciplined and have a strategy involved, then it's hard for us to execute on what we need to execute on because we don't have a roadmap. Like, that's the reasons why, if you go back earlier when we first started this whole program, I said we have a $340 trillion problem. We have to think globally, but we have to act locally. And the only way that we can act locally is by really confronting what we have in front of us and understanding that we have to make certain shifts and changes in our lives because life is going to go on with or without us. And if we don't clearly and conspicuously really channel that energy in a certain way that's productive every single day, then we won't rise above our own matrices. We all have a part of this matrix that affects us. Okay, it's not doom and gloom with me. It never has been and never will be. I got stuck out in the desert by myself on record for over 30 days. That's a whole different story. It'll take more than 2 hours to even talk about it. But when I look at it now, I'm just like, how did I even survive that? My first market was literally death. Like if I didn't move a certain way at a certain time in the desert, I would not be here to talk to you today. That has shaped and molded my life where I have a sense of urgency in everything that I do. It's one of the reasons why I'm so adamant on people getting results, is because I know how short this life is and I know how fast our last breath can be. So I bring that level of urgency into anybody who I'm working with personally or professionally, because your survival is important to me. What you do in this world to impact others is important to me. How you move and how you help other people out who really need your help is important to me. It's been so much divide and conquer to the point where we don't understand how much this has impacted us on a whole different level. And I'm talking about for generations. Okay. So if we're able to really collectively come together and understand that like we are really a part of this matrix of life, then we'll be able to really survive it and thrive it and grow and help other people, and everybody's eating and everybody's got what they want. you know so without that being said, I'm going to stop this, but if you want more of this right here, you can go check it out. I might go into a little bit more of it on the next show, but for the most part, I just want to check in with you and just say, really thank you for your trust, because trust is everything. It starts with trust, and I can bleed my heart out for 2 hours, or I can really, work with people during the show and just really help you understand that it's your God-given right to get out here and absolutely change the world the way that you want to change it. So, I got about 8 more minutes here. I can talk a little bit more about what I envision as far as the next steps go. Like I said, I come from the inner city, Chester, Pennsylvania. I've done really well in my life. I've had a chance to really help people out. And one of the biggest things that I can tell you that really drives and motivates me is the fact that if you'd have told me that I would be like moving the way that I'm moving and absolutely like even going to the UN, as crazy as that sounds, just like, it's Fred's life. I've had a chance to just really live an above average life. And I really attribute that to just having amazing people who have been able to connect with, Joe being one of them, that we can really, once we collectively come together, really serve this planet to the highest level like it's never been served before. I look at the blessings that technology has brought to us. I see the good in everybody, but I'm also not naive. What I like to train my clients on specifically is this: my life is just like me being a knight in the shining armor, right? I've got this castle that I come out of every single day. I lower the drawbridge. I go across the moat. I go out here and slay all the dragons, right? I'm out here helping people and just doing my best to make sure that people understand that, we really are connected and we have to start like working together and do some stuff, right? And then after that, I come back home and I lift that drawbridge up and I get ready for the next day. Well, the part that most people miss, and the reasons why we tend to not get our goals and our dreams like really fulfilled, is because of what I just said in that story. There's a moat there. We have to have a barrier there. We have to have something to say, hey, this is what I'm for, this is what I'm against. And when I lower that drawbridge, that's what I'm going out into. I'm going out into that world to really get out here and ethically impose my will to make things happen so that I can bless other people with what I do. Because what Joe does is not something that Fred can do, and what other people in my life, I just can't do that kind of stuff. We really do need each other on a huge level. And one of the old military tactics, quite frankly, is divide and conquer. It's one of the things that this above the matrix methodology really narrows down. What I can tell you though is that the wild card of this is the fact that a whole bunch of people know this information that you don't even know. You know, like the actual operators, the people who have been professionally trained to run ads, to market like you've never been marketed to before. It's just so many insane rooms out here. It's crazy, but they don't know any better. It's because I've talked to some of these guys, like I've coached them up, and it's like you didn't know that was that, like you don't shouldn't do that, like like you don't do that, like. And I'll give you an example. Even when I was in the car business, like when I first learned how to do finance and insurance, um, I didn't know that you couldn't like sell a service contract and say, "Oh, come back in 30 days, we'll fix it." Like that was something that you shouldn't do, and I didn't know that. But once I found out, I was like, "Oh, I can't do that. That's not ethical. Like you can't do that kind of stuff, right?" So we have a whole generation from April 30th. That's the date, April 30th, 1993, up until today, Friday, May 2nd, right? Who are still learning about this technology called the internet. It has a low barrier to entry. We barely knew how to talk and communicate to each other before. Now we're really getting out here and working with technology. And it's just like, oh, well, now I'm going to really multiply that I don't know how to communicate with people, right? So we see all of this crazy stuff online. Then we have all of these different cultures that have evolved as a result of this one medium. And now we can stack AI on top of it. We have the perfect recipe to never really communicate with people perfectly ever again. So we need to fix this. And in order to understand what the whole core and crux of Above the Matrix is just that. What I'm here to do is to really, from a very high level, but also very much so in the weeds, because like I said, I still turn wrenches to this day. I have fun helping people out. But what I want everybody to understand is that we are at the most prolific time in our life right now, where all we have to do is understand the methodology, the strategies, the techniques, the technology, communication, like how to put all this stuff together. It's no differently than like cake mix, right? Where you live at is differently than where I live at. Well, we can go to a supermarket and go buy the cake mix right off the shelf, and it says step 1, preheat your oven to 350. Step 2, do this. Step 3, add the eggs and milk. Like it's really that predictable now in our lives. So in my mind, my brain breaks every time that I see people out here who don't understand that one concept, which is if you reach for help, you can actually get real help these days, because before it wasn't like that. There was a lot more of like hidden knowledge out there. But now people, if you have the internet connection and if you ask like chat the right questions, then chances are you'll be able to really get the right answers that you're looking for. So this is going to be more of like a training and development, personal and professional like infusion, if that makes sense. Because I've been in enough of these audiences to know that that's what's wanted and what's needed. And my challenge to anybody who's watching this is to really go back, take these life lessons and just really apply them. So I want to thank you so much for watching the first ever Above the Matrix, and we will chat soon. So for now, I'll see you next week. Peace.